you go to that website and click on the Start Here link in the upper left-hand corner, it'll take you to a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Rice's book. His book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? That chapter of the book contains a narrative description of the primary tool in this work. That tool is called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet. And it's a tool I've been using to great advantage for over 17 years to improve the quality of my life and most of my relationships, and to turn any negative emotional experience I have into part of the infallible guidance system that each of us have been gifted. You can also download the actual worksheet process itself. It's a simple PDF file. Click it, download it, print it off, and use it as often as you'd like. You can also go to your app store and type in the 3 words Heartland Aramaic Forgiveness, and you'll get access to a completely free and private app that contains the Reality Management Worksheet, an abbreviated version of that worksheet process, and a copy of the Dragon Klingon game, which is a wonderful way to introduce these tools to even younger audiences. You can also download a whole host of audio files of shows just like this one where people have been stepped through that process or given powerful testimonials about how the use of these tools improves their lives and relationships. And we hope people do that soon and often because it often raises comments or questions, and then you can give us a call at 563-999-3581 and press 1. And that'll let us know you have a comment or a question or a testimonial. Or you can email us at tjh@mindshifters-academy.org. Or you can email Jeanie at jeanie@yagain.org. We're also doing the Course in Miracles workbook lessons this year, and we're on the 223rd day of the year. And today's lesson reads, God is my life, I have no life but His. I was mistaken when I thought I lived apart from the Creator, a separate entity that moved in isolation, unattached, and housed within a body. Now I know my life is the Creator's life. I have no other home. I do not exist apart from the Creator. The Creator has no thoughts that are not part of me, and I have none but those which are part of the Creator. And then it suggests, Our Father, let us see the face of Christ instead of our mistakes. For we who are your holy offspring are without sin. We would look upon our sinlessness, for guilt proclaims that we are not your offspring. And we would not forget you any longer. We are lonely here, and we long for heaven, where we are at home. Today we would return. Our name is yours, and we acknowledge that we are your offspring. We're also doing the Course in Miracles experiment, and those lessons from Pam Grout, as I said, beginning this section, Pam lets us know that many of these following lessons are those that she feels don't fit for her. So RSOs, she rips those suckers out. So her lesson 223 is simply this, titled, Spoiler Alert, There's Just One Problem. Carlos Castaneda is quoted here as saying, we either make ourselves miserable or we make ourselves happy. The amount of work is the same. Pam writes very briefly, Lesson 223, she interprets it as, what was I thinking? This lesson tells me the only problem I could ever have is seeing myself differently from how the Creator sees me. The dude sees me as perfect, funny, loving, gorgeous, free of all problems. P.S. It also sees everyone else that way. And as many of Abraham's teachings tell us, anytime we have upset, tension, fear, anger, frustration, hurt, It's a direct result of us choosing to view ourselves and the world and our brothers and sisters differently than our Creator would see that person. So we're creating the tension, the fear, the anger, and the upset by refusing to see things as they actually are, by creating a perception which is inaccurate. It's impartial. It is partial at best and perhaps completely false. Only partially true at best and perhaps completely false. And I would take time here in the beginning of the global company that does construction work, over $14 billion in revenue yearly, over 55,000 employees. And Paul, that I spoke with this morning for the interview, has somehow managed to convince the leaders of this corporation and really make sure that he or she is listening to you and knows every other drug you're on and takes the time to look up potential negative interactions with other drugs. I remember one time I sat in a business networking group, and a chiropractor brought in some case files, and he said, it's almost unheard of that someone comes into his office with a headache as their primary complaint. Adjust my back and neck, doc. I've got these bad headaches, to address, improve, put their money where their mouth was about mental health for their employees. And once they had created this with a psychologist, they asked themselves, well, since we're doing this for our employees, why don't we do it for their friends and families too? And once they got to that point, they said, well, wait a minute, if it's so good, why aren't we offering it, since it's already up and running, why aren't we offering it to our clients? And eventually from there, they said, well, why don't we just open it up to anybody? And so now oml.world is available, and you or anybody else can go there and, as often as you'd like, and take the free mental health check-in and just answer the questions as honestly as you can. And when you're done, it'll show you the areas where you're strong and where you're not so strong, and where you might want to put some extra effort right away. So, free resource. Do yourself and anybody you know a favor. At least introduce them to it. It's well done. It's up and running, and there are. It's what they call open source. It's just free to anybody. So yesterday, he's got some very solid ideas about different ways to talk about spirituality. He's a physician who had his own awakening experience after quite a while of working as a physician. And yesterday the conversation was about, his use of the word feeling versus emotions. And I find it very useful to tease out some of those differences and get more and more clear about what are these experiences I'm having, and how can I decide when my ego is run amok? How do I determine when my ego is fulfilling its intended purpose in a useful way? And again, the simple answer to that is, if I'm feeling calm, if I'm feeling safe, if I'm feeling grateful or compassionate, my ego is probably doing its job well. And if I have any kind of a negative emotion going on, and a recurring negative thought or negative emotion, it's a very good probability, a very high probability that my ego has run amok, and that I am focused more on the experience of being right at all costs, rather than being asked to be shown how to have a relationship with rightness. And when I have a relationship with rightness, I will be in this state of connection and joy and compassion and gratitude. And when I'm not in connection with rightness, I will have those negative emotional states. I will have the tension, the anger, the fear, the grief, the frustration. So there is a pretty good, if not an infallible, feedback system to let us know when we're headed in the right direction, when we're, running on all cylinders, as some people would say. And yet, our culture doesn't teach us about that system. Our culture does not teach us about the true source of our emotions, useful ways of dealing with our various emotions when they arise from our own internal processing. Our culture teaches us, attribute your emotions to things outside of you, and then blame or attack or run away from those people or situations when your emotional experience is something that you don't like. And this leaves us trapped. This leaves us in the endless wild goose chase. And the core of this work and many other good spiritual teachings is the opposite of that, to liberate us from that wild goose chase. And from what we were discussing yesterday and what Ellen was reading from Dr. Moss's work, he's gotten some deep insights into that. And so if you're looking for a slightly different way to understand this work and the core principles, there's yet another author. There's The Impersonal Life by Joseph S. Benner. There's The Way of Mastery that you can use as a kinder, gentler version of the Course in Miracles. There's a whole series of books by Pema Chodron. We've talked about a couple of them. We've read them and reviewed them for this podcast. You can go to the mindshiftersacademy.org website, and there's a separate page listing books we've read and discussed on the Mindshifters Radio. And all kinds of people basically observing the same thing, finding slightly different ways to talk about it, to create analogies of it, and all for the purpose of assisting each of us to find our own way, to get more reliable connection and access to our own internal guidance system. So if you have any interest in getting more reliable, consistent access to your own internal guidance system, or if you've discovered another way that's different than what we've been presenting so far, give us a call, 563-999-3581. And when you call that number, press 1, and it'll put a little question mark by your phone number, and I'll announce you by your area code. And we would be delighted to have a conversation. Especially interested if somebody takes the mental health check-in at oml.world and want to give us your feedback or comments about that. I have a connection to one of the primary people involved in that work, and they would love to have our feedback. So not only is it a thing that you can use to benefit yourself, but you can also have some input into its effectiveness and usability. As I mentioned, it is considerably shorter than the personal code evaluation. And the idea is to highlight and raise awareness for what some of us have been calling for a while mental emotional hygiene, the kind of thing where we daily, if not multiple times a day, practice cleaning up our energy systems, cleaning up our thoughts and emotions, becoming more and more aware of how actively we participate in the creation of our life experience. And then once we've awakened to that, and hopefully, as in the case of the work Michael and Jeannie create and many other people, we've learned some tools that allow us to manage those life experiences, manage those emotions that we generate, manage the energies within us that get resonated, that once they get resonated, drive our behavior even if we are decades removed from the event. I had a 36-year-old not too long ago that was very, very frustrated with his it still boggles my mind that I'm able at this stage of the game, because of what Michael and Jeannie Rice have done, to offer to people a tool that has this level of intense effectiveness absolutely free. And the catch is, and there's always a catch, right? The catch is people have to be willing to pick up the tool and apply it in their lives. I can't just mention the tool to somebody and have it change their life for the better. I can't send them to the website and have it transform their life. I can't wave the worksheet process at them once I print it out and have it change their life. And yet, it isn't a whole lot more difficult than that if people are willing to put forth what the Way of Mastery would call a smidgen of effort. In the Way of Mastery, it uses the word smidgen related to willingness. And now I'm modifying it a little bit and saying effort. Based on all of the other trainings and techniques and tools that I've learned in 47 years of doing this kind of work, the reality management worksheet is almost ridiculously easy in comparison to most of the others. It's consistently more powerfully effective for me, and it's free. So that's why we're here, that's why we're talking about it, and that's what we're open for discussion about. If you have a situation in your life that's seemingly intractable, or you've got a comment or a question about how the use of the tool in your life is helping you, give us a call, 563-999-3581, and press 1, and we'll have a conversation. I finished recently the book related to how drug companies are lying to us and deceiving us and what to do about it. And while I can recommend the book, I can also acknowledge that most people won't want to, who don't have a specialty like psychology, that they won't invest in the time in doing that. But it's by Marcia Angell, Angell, and the title of the book is The Truth About Drug Companies, and the subtitle has something to do with, how they're lying to us and deceiving us and what we can do about it. And if you got a hold of that book, you could, get a lot out of just reading the last chapter and the afterword. But I don't have that in a format that I can read it to you right now. But the idea is, in the afterword, she gives a series of steps that she feels would really take us a long way to modifying, to correcting, to having a much healthier relationship with the drug companies. And as I was talking to somebody recently about the, I guess it's chapter 13, it's how to save the pharmaceutical industry and get our money's worth. And she talks about how, despite all of its successes, this is an important industry that should be saved, but mainly from itself. Well, what that also means hidden in this is saved from itself and the corruption in the industry and the greed, but also the corruption in our government, because basically our government is supporting and passing laws that allow the drug companies to survive on Me Too drugs rather than creating their own drugs, and advertise direct to consumers, and compare new drugs to placebo rather than making them demonstrate that they're better than an existing drug. And so there's a whole series of things that she recommends based on each of the chapters that have explained them in detail, so you can get, quite a bit of good information just from chapter 13 of that book and the afterword. So sometimes people are able to get these books used or get them at a library, and she recommends these things in her afterword. Clearly, the pharmaceutical industry and the medical profession need thoroughgoing reform, and our Congress and the Food and Drug Administration need to be reminded that they exist to serve the public, not to serve the drug companies. In the meantime, here's what you can do as an individual to protect your interests. Here are a few specific suggestions. When your doctor prescribes a new drug, ask him or her these questions. Question number 1, what is the evidence that this drug is better than an alternative drug or some other approach to treatment? Next question, has the evidence been published in a peer-reviewed medical journal? Or are you relying on information from drug company representatives rather than peer-reviewed medical journal? She suggests that you insist on getting a straight answer to these questions, and if necessary, ask for a reference to a journal article or a medical textbook. Another question to ask is this drug better only because it's given at a higher dose? And would a cheaper drug be as effective if it were given at an equivalent dose, which is another scam that the drug companies run? The few times where they do compare an older drug to a newer drug, they're usually doing them at mixed dosages, and the truth is that most often the newer drugs are simply copycats of the older drugs, and there's no significant difference in the molecular structure. It was just enough difference to squeak it by the patent office. So she says, clearly, sometimes the best course is to simply increase the dose of an older drug. Remember, there is usually no reason to think that new drugs are better than old ones in our current system because they're not compared to the older drugs, and they're often only created so that the drug company can establish a new patent and have exclusivity rights and charge lots more for the newer drug for a longer period of time. The other factor to consider is that the older a drug is, the better its safety record is likely to be. Sometimes these drugs are on the market for a few years before they find out, oh my gosh, it's causing this or that big problem, or it's having this or that negative interaction with another drug. And then eventually they either correct it or take it off the market, or they start making appropriate warnings to look for complications with other drugs, etc. So the longer it's been on the market and it hasn't been recalled and it hasn't been identified as creating lots and lots of other problems, the safer it's likely to be. Another question to ask is, are the benefits worth the side effects, the expense, and the risk of interactions with other drugs I take? This is one that I strongly encourage everyone to ask your doctor. He says it's almost unheard of that the people who have that complaint don't have a list. Most of them have a list of medications they're taking, and when the doctor, the chiropractor, pulls up the list of side effects from this list of 5 or 6 or 8 medications people are taking, most of the medications they're taking list as a potential side effect headaches. So, oh, the tangled web we weave when first we practice to eat these drugs. I know it doesn't rhyme, but you get the effect. The next question to ask is this a free sample? And if so, is there a generic drug or an equivalent drug I can take that is cheaper whenever the free sample runs out? Why would you need to ask that question? Because drug companies spend billions of dollars in giving doctors free samples, and many of them are of Me Too drugs, meaning it's the same old drug that's run out of a patent with some slight change in it and been renamed, so now they can get a new patent, and now they've got exclusivity for X number of years, and now they can charge a boatload of money for it. But again, it hasn't been tested against the older drug to demonstrate it's better than, and most often it's almost exactly the same molecular structure. So the free samples are a false economy. They're just designed to get you and your doctor hooked on the newest and most expensive drugs. And then here's a question that many people will not be assertive enough to ask. And many people will have a challenge asking this question, either because of their intimidation factor or because they actually feel like they have a personal relationship with their doctor. But the question is simply this: Doctor, do you have any financial ties with the company that makes this drug? For example, do you consult for the company? Other than free drug samples, do you receive gifts from drug companies? Are you being paid to put me on this drug and then enroll me in a drug company study? Do you, doctor, make time for visits from drug company representatives? If the answer to any of these questions is yes, she recommends that you consider changing your doctor. You need to know, or she recommends that you might want to know, that your doctor's decisions are based solely on what's best for you and not what's best for the drug company's bottom line. So, the other last piece of advice here is about checking about your representatives for Congress and making sure that they are not taking contributions from the drug companies. And last but not least, pay no attention to any direct-to-consumer ad, whether it's in a magazine or television or radio. Because the only thing about those ads is to get them to be able to charge you more for taking those drugs. It's not about education. It's not about your benefit, boosting their sales. So that's my offering for today. We have 17 minutes left. 563-999-3581. Call that number and press 1, and we can have a conversation right after we're done talking to Ellen.
Hi, Dr. Tim.
Hello.
Hi. In accordance with what you were just talking about, I have a question. And I'm someone who, I'm fortunate that I haven't ever had to be really on any drugs for any reason. But I did just have surgery a couple weeks ago, and they prescribed me a pain medicine. And, and as soon as, I got home and started to feel the pain, I was like, okay, I got to go. I was thankful that I had this prescription, and I went and I got it filled, and I took one, and I had a horrible reaction. I mean, I went through the ringer. And so I guess my question is, I let them know what happened to me, and I asked them to please put it on my record with the hospital to never, ever, ever prescribe that drug for me again. But I feel like I need to do more, because if I had that sort of reaction, I mean, it put me in a really bad place. And from what I understand, I was almost in hypothermia, which I don't even know what that really does to you, but that kind of scared me. And I'm thinking, if that happened to me, I'm sure it can happen to other people. And I just feel like I need, and then I talked to a psychologist friend of mine, and she said, oh, that's a concern that this is a drug that they're just giving out to people without any sort of warning. And being, a pain medicine, I mean, that's a pretty common thing that gets prescribed to people. And I don't want anyone to go through what I went through. And
well,
so I'm just
unfortunately,
wondering,
there's nothing you can do to prevent that. And I'm sure that what will happen, since it's been approved by the FDA, is that when you bring that up, they'll say, well, you just had an allergic reaction. And they can't ever predict, unless you have a history with similar medications, they can't predict when people might have a bad reaction to a medication where it's just their body chemistry responding to this medication, because lots and lots of other people have not had a similar experience.
All right.
So the best thing you can do is make sure that you tell everybody who's treating you have an allergy to this medication.
Right. And
then you can, do what you're doing now. You call the internet show and tell everybody you know. But it's Tramadol is a medication they use for moderate to severe pain in adults. It's been approved by the Food and Drug Administration, and so it's going to be out there, which is, just another good reason for people to say, buyer beware. And, with any kind of pain medication these days, what we know is there is so much of a problem with these things being prescribed basically wholesale, that we should all be very, very careful. Whenever anybody gives us something for pain, we should ask, is this addictive? Is this an opioid? Is there something less intense I can take? Right? Is there another way to treat this pain other than just taking a drug? It's all those things that I just read from the book. And, tramadol is listed as something that's similar to an opioid. Well, what does that mean? Well, it means it affects your central nervous system, and it's extraordinarily powerful. So, you want to make sure that if you take something like that after a surgery or a procedure, that you're not taking anything else that might conflict with it. That's another thing that, sometimes there are these, I remember they had an atypical antidepressant that was called the monoamine oxidase inhibitors, MAOIs. And the reason they called them atypical antidepressants was because they had some special warnings that they should give people, and they had a knowledge that different food groups might create bad reactions if people were taking this medication. And so it got to be a bother for the doctors and the pharmacies to tell people, okay, your doctor wants you to take this antidepressant, but now you better not have any red wine, you better not eat any nuts, you better stay away from this kind of mushrooms, you better not eat any aged cheese, or whatever it was, this list of foods that might cause a bad reaction with it. And so what they did was they started prescribing them only if the other antidepressants that didn't have all those food contraindications weren't working.
Mm-hmm.
But there are medications, and for you, tramadol might be one of them, that, is going to have a conflict with something that you eat on a regular basis, and they don't know that. It's like there's an allergy, there's an atypical reaction, and we can only hope that the reaction you had was atypical. We can't be certain of it.
If it could have been,
but we can hope.
I was still feeling the effects of the anesthesia, and I'm wondering if that, coupled with the tramadol, could have been part of the problem. I don't know. I have no idea. All I know is I started to feel
complicated web.
Yeah, and so I was like, oh, good, I have a prescription to take care of this. And little did I know.
Little did I know, it almost took care of you in a whole different way, yeah.
Yeah, and there I was, like, in this, and the pain wasn't even going, the original pain. It took like 4 hours for that original pain to even go away, and meanwhile I'm suffering much worse than the original pain.
Yeah. And for all you know, the original pain might have gone away on its own after 4 hours without the tramadol.
Right, exactly. I mean, I never would have taken it if I had any inkling that I could have any sort of it just didn't even occur to me, honestly. And so I just thought, is there anything I can do? But I guess, like you said, no, just let people know that. Yeah,
the best advice I would have for you if that happened to me is I would make sure that every doctor that treated me was alerted to the fact that, as far as I'm concerned, I'm allergic to that medication.
Right. Well, I'm not worried about
and once that happens, anybody who's really good at what they're doing will assume that I'm also allergic to any medication in that family of medications.
Right. Because I've been on other pain medicines in my life before. The name of, like that they are like opioids, I guess, and that I'm familiar with the names of. I had never heard of this, and it was the first time I did have a bad reaction. So, okay. Yeah, I'm not concerned about myself anymore because I will definitely let, every doctor that treats me know about that. But just worried, someone else is going to end up the same way I was, just not suspecting, and go through what I went through.
That's a possibility, especially with the way our system is now. That's why I personally tell people, buyer beware. Be very careful as you're consuming what is called in this culture healthcare, which Michael Rice says over and over again, it's just disease care. It's not health care. So
there's no website out there anywhere that you can report things like this about reactions to drugs?
Well, there might be. Google it and find out.
Okay.
There are more and more people as consumers that are they're taking the initiative, and they're doing what they can to spread the news. So there might be some where you can report that, and they're not likely to be government run, but they might be consumer run.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Anything else?
No, that was it.
Okay. Let me know if you decide to go to oml.world and take their mental health check-in and what you think about it.
Okay.
It's free and no strings attached, and we're looking for people to give it an experience and then give us a report. How did they like it? So far, according to the authors, they've had no negative experiences.
Okay. I was going to say, I'm almost like when I hear about something like that, I think, oh, well, what if it tells me that there's something wrong with me that I wasn't aware of?
Well, it's not here. Just to get reassured here. This is not about identifying a disease.
Right.
This is a mental health check-in, right? This is about, hey, am I spending too much time on social media and it's negatively affecting my mood, and I didn't really realize it until I answer a series of questions like this? It's that kind of thing. It's about, your sleep habits. It's about your social media habits. It's about relationships. It's not about do you have cancer of the brain, right? It's nothing like that. It's not a high-tech. It's a mental health check-in.
I knew it was about mental health, but I, in some ways, think that my mental state may not be considered normal, but in my mind, that's not necessarily a bad thing. And I don't want to get something in my mind that tells me, oh, this isn't good. Well,
I'm having taken it myself, I don't think there is anything in this that would do that.
Okay. This
is just asking you about how you feel about different aspects of your life. It's not, there is no judgment in it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not asking you, have you read a Matt Kahn book? And if so, that means you're crazy. You get 1 point for being too woo-woo because you read a Matt Kahn book. It's not like that. And I don't want to put any pressure on you. I mean, feel free to just skip the whole thing if there's any part of you that's going to generate anxiety about it.
Yeah.
But if you're going to generate anxiety about it, we have a worksheet you can do and get rid of that anxiety.
That's so funny.
It isn't funny. It's just the truth. and you don't need to go. And you don't need to go do the mental health check-in, and you could still choose to use a worksheet and get rid of that anxiety because it's not coming from the oml.world website.
Exactly. Yeah. So in that way, it could be seen as another tool.
So the idea that some statistics estimate that 1 million people a year take their own life. And if we can help raise awareness about mental health issues proactively, maybe we can make an impact on those million lives.
That's awesome. Okay, great. I will definitely check that out.
All right. Have a great show.
Thank you, and thanks for covering yesterday.
You're entirely welcome and deserving.
Thanks.